Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. My lord, why hurry this much? We were followed. I felt no disturbance, my lord. No, they were very good, but there were 2 holes in the perv, like the mummy in the council room. Not even an ounce of perversion. It felt so unnatural, said Hinata, finishing his sentence. I felt it too. I perceived such holes in the perv a few times before, but they disappeared so quickly that I never paid it any attention. I think Danzo is the cause for this. He must be dealt with. Such an abomination cannot remain in our village. Agreed. Shall I call for Stench, my lord? Yes. Send him to the throne room, we'll meet him there. Naruto made his way through the castle at a brisk pace, his kimono flowing around his legs. Had the villagers seen him, they would have thought it was a different kid altogether. There was no goofiness, no perverted smile, only seriousness. Finally, he stepped in the throne room and marched to the throne, a simple wooden chair for now, since the last one had been stolen. He sat on it, Hinata sitting in his lap. Stench quickly came in. Master, he said, his big bright eyes shining with curiosity. Stench, I have for you a mission of the utmost importance. A man must be eliminated in Konoha, discreetly. His name is Shimura Danzo. I will show you his face on the orb before you go. His death must look like an accident, do you understand? Yes, Stench understand. Good. Now follow me. Hinata got down and walked next to him to the orb. Naruto placed his hand on the orb, and the surface contorted to show Danzo. Stench looked at him for a few seconds, and then he darted to the portal and teleported, going to Konoha to fulfill his sinister mission. Naruto sighed tiredly. I am afraid I am not in the mood for fooling around tonight, my dear. He said apologetically to Hinata. The heiress only gave a poor smile. I know what you mean. Come on. Let's just go to bed. The 2 teens made their way to their bedroom, stripped, and slipped under the sheets, cuddling together and enjoying the skin contact. As they held onto each other, they were slowly lulled to sleep by the warmth of the embrace, and the heartbeat of their beloved. Hinata slowly began to emerge from her sleep feeling strange, though she couldn't express what felt different. She tried to rub the sleep out of her eyes, and that's when she realized what the problem was. She couldn't move her arms because they were tied behind her back. When she tried to move her jaw, she realized a familiar ball gag was in her mouth. She began to feel excited, wondering what her beloved had in stock for her. Ah, you are awake, I see. She turned her head, and saw her fiancé, as the day he was born, laying next to her. Then we can begin our fun. Though, we'll have to be quick about it, we wouldn't want to miss our tests. Naruto rolled on top of her and quickly grabbed her legs. Now, he had control of her last 2 free limbs, she was effectively helpless in his hands. And it aroused her to no end. Then she felt another pair of hands pulling her up. Looking above her shoulder, she saw another Naruto, smiling impishly at her. Oh Kami-sama, yes. The clone impaled her rear on his spear while the original claimed her front in one swift thrust. She moaned in the gag, reveling in the feeling of fullness and the delicious friction inside of her. The 2 Naruto were kneeled, with her legs wrapped around the original's waist, the one behind palming and massaging her ass while the one in the front was holding onto her thigh. They began to move her back and forth between them, making it so when one of them moved out the other moved in. Hinata felt like she was his toy, his little plaything, and it was a massive turn on to her. She was his to have any way he wanted, just like she had dreamed in the academy. The 2 Naruto were raining kisses on her neck, nibbling on her ear lobes, muttering dirty things in her ears, pumping themselves in her. She felt like she was in heaven. Under such stimulation, she reached her peak fast, and climaxed with a muffled scream, squeezing an orgasm out of both of her lovers as they buried themselves in her as one. They all panted happily, but Hinata felt that they were still hard, so very hard, and she knew there was more coming. And she loved it. She felt the ball gag being removed and the manhoods leave her. Then she heard the sound of splashing water, and looking behind her, she saw the Naruto she assumed was the clone washing his sword. She was grateful. While she did enjoy anal, she didn't want to Ana that went up there, or to have it in her. It could cause diseases, no matter how clean she was down there. The clone came back and took hold of her bound wrists, putting her on her knees, her body parallel to the bed. Naruto placed his joystick right in front of her, and she began to lick and kiss it, waiting for him to decide when he wanted to take her mouth. She felt the one behind push inside of her and she moaned in ecstasy. "Now, what are you, my sweet Hinata?" he asked, his voice laced with lust. "I am your pet, Naruto-sama." She answered in a breath. Why wasn't he moving? She was a good pet. Why was she punished? "Yes, my sweet, you are. And you've been a very good pet." The Naruto behind her began to pump himself in her slowly, making Hinata moan in pleasure. "Now, be an even better pet, and earn your reward," the one before her said as he pushed his hips forward. Instantly, Hinata wrapped her lips around the pulsing manhood and began to greedily, moaning with every thrust from the blonde behind her. The two blondes began to pick up their pace, going always faster, and soon they were driving into her with all their might. Hinata had closed her eyes to enjoy it. It was almost everything she always wanted, the man she loved, and that loved her back, dominating her, using her, making her his love toy. If they could just add a harem of Y girls, it would be perfect. "Ooh, your reward is almost there, my Y pet," moaned the Naruto at the back, his counterpart at the front moaning his confirmation. Hinata was a very good pet. She knew her master loved to give her this reward, and she craved it, so she ed harder and tried to tighten her inner walls, and she succeeded quite well if Naruto N degree 2's moans were anything to go by. She had some trouble breathing, but she didn't care. All she wanted was to have her reward as soon as possible. The back blonde slammed into a very sweet spot, sending shivers of delight down her spine and causing her to let out a long moan. She didn't see it, but she knew her lover had an impish smile on his face as he began hammering into that spot, sending all coherent thinking down the gutter of her mind. She only knew pleasure, and her love for the man doing all this to her. Suddenly, everything went white as pleasure overcame her. The tightening of her womanhood and her long moan caused both of her lovers to climax inside of her, and it is only because her body had associated Naruto's taste with swallowing that she didn't drown. The Naruto behind her dispersed, confirming her theory, and the one in her mouth pulled out. Both teens were panting, but they were happy. Hinata rolled on her side and looked lovingly at Naruto. "That was a very pleasant wake-up, my love," she said softly. The blonde smiled and pulled her to him, pressing their chests together as he kissed her sweetly. "I want the best for my love," he said serenely. "Now, shall we get a shower?" Yes. Though, to be at the top of our game, we should probably not fool around in the shower." "Yes, true. Oh, well, there's always tonight." The teens got up, Naruto untying Hinata, and they went to the bathroom to clean up. After a nice shower with a good serving of cuddling, kisses and sweet nothings, they got dressed and took a good breakfast. Yeah, Kakashi had said not to, but hey, with the state they had left him in, if he was there before 9, Naruto would be ready to go a whole week without Hinata. And for him, that was a lot. After the breakfast, they went to the portal, zapped back to Konoha, shared a last kiss, and then went their separate ways. Naruto sighed. He wondered what the test would be about. Uchiha Sasuke was not amused. Not at all. He had gotten up at 5 a.m., had prepared swiftly, and gotten to the training ground at 5:30, avoiding breakfast as Kakashi ordered. It was 8:55, and there were no traces of either Kakashi or Naruto. Sometimes, he wondered if he was cursed. Right now, with Sakura talking his ears off, he knew he was cursed. Finally, the blonde came into view, whistling happily to himself. "Oh, hey you two. Sensei not here yet, huh?" said the blonde. "Hey, I'm still in Hinata. Naruto baka, you're late. I'll tell Sensei and he'll have you expelled from the program." "Ma, that would be quite hypocritical of him since he's late too," answered Naruto with a smile as he jumped onto one of the 3 training logs and sat cross-legged. A few minutes passed, and Kakashi finally appeared. "Hello students. I apologize for the delay, I got lost on the road of life. Now, shall we begin our test?" Sakura and Sasuke's eyebrows twitched a lot, but Kakashi clearly didn't care for that. He pulled out 2 bells from his pouch and tied them to his belt. "Alright, your goal is to get these bells, come at me with the intent to kill, otherwise you won't stand a chance. You get a bell, you pass." He then took out an alarm clock and placed it on the stone nearby. "This clock is set to ring at noon, if you haven't taken a bell by that time, you lose. Do you understand everything?" They all nodded. "Good. Now go." In a flash, they all went into hiding. Though, with Sakura's hair, she was easy to spot. What really surprised Kakashi was that Naruto's blonde hair wasn't seen. For some time, he waited, then out of boredom, he took his favorite book out. This time, it was Ika Ika Night Life, the tale of 2 young people loving each other dearly, but unable to express their love, so to cope they went to a club at night to give themselves to others, their identity kept hidden by a mask. In these nights of debauchery, they found each other and became lover until they went to no one else but each other. And then came the part where they discovered the other's identity and, a hail of shuriken nailed Kakashi in the side, before a puff of smoke enveloped him, leaving a log in its wake. Sasuke swore under his breath and moved to a new position. He needed a bell, that much was certain, and he would do whatever he could to get it. He tried to think of a way to get the bell, maybe even the 2 bells. That would be a worthy show of his abilities. But the 2 others were a problem. Sakura would get in the way and Naruto, with that armor suit of his, was an actual competitor. He landed on a thick branch to take a breather. Maybe he could use this situation to his advantage. This was like a mission, and a shinobi should do everything he could to achieve his objectives. That included sacrificing pawns. A sinister smirk made its way to his lips. Naruto was hiding where no one would expect him to. Under the lake. He was using a small piece of bamboo to breathe while staying close to the surface. To make sure he was undetected, he had hidden among a patch of bamboo that grew there, and to spy more efficiently, he was channeling chakra to his ears. However, he was far from satisfied so far. He had only heard the whistling of weapons, a bunch of meaty thunks, and a poof. Deciding to just quit it, he began to slowly make his way to the shore. Normally, he would use chakra to push the water out of his clothes, but he refrained for now, it could lead Kakashi to him. Something clicked in his mind, and a mischievous smile appeared on his lips. Using stealth gained from a few pranks and loads of peeping, he snuck into the forest and began to lay trap after trap. Once he was satisfied, he used his chakra to push the water out of his clothes, quite obnoxiously too, just to be sure. Then, he unsealed his armor and waited. And it began. Explosions began to rock the forest, weapons came flying, birds left in a panic, and a sadistic grin graced his lips, hidden behind his mempo. When Kakashi finally landed in the clearing, he looked a bit tired and was panting lightly. Nice trap layout. I actually had some trouble escaping some of your traps, if only because of the sheer number. Where did you learn all that? Well, pranking sure does help with trap making. Besides, quantity has a quality of its own. I don't remember who said that, but I do remember he was in. True. Anyway, I guess we should begin this little fight, huh? Said Kakashi as he took his stance. Naruto didn't answer, and simply charged him, sending a pulse of chakra to detonate the two tags behind Kakashi, the shockwave putting the Jonin off balance and stunning him temporarily. However, he hadn't reached his rank simply by reading smut. Kakashi rolled under a punch and sprang up once behind his hopefully soon-to-be student and span in midair, sending his right foot slamming into Naruto's side, sending the teen flying into a tree and hurting his toes like hell. Ow. Full metal plate armor. Interesting, you're way faster than you should be. Ah, the marvels of Fuinjutsu. Answered Naruto as he got up. Now, shall we dance again? Kakashi smiled. They charged at each other again and engaged in a fight. Naruto's speed was good, even without his armor, but once in the Fuinjutsu enhanced cuirass, he reached mid-chunin speed, making his taijutsu much more efficient. That wouldn't have been a problem for Kakashi if his blonde charge hadn't decided to summon 5 clones to help him, and with their metallic plating, they proved far more resistant than regular shadow clones. By now, Kakashi was impressed, very much so. He never had a genin keep him on his toes before. Then something unexpected happened. Sakura came in, charging rather slowly for a genin, while screaming a battle cry. The 6 Naruto began to work around her, making sure she didn't get in the way of their attacks while staying out of the way of her quite sloppy punches. Kakashi noticed that, more than anything, Sakura was trying to pin him down, to keep him in one place. He idly wondered why she would do this and if she was working with Sasuke. Maybe there was some hope for these two after all. The 6 Naruto also seemed to have understood that because they began to give Sakura more and more shots at blocking Kakashi's ankles, and then the girl used 2 kunai linked with ninja wire to wrap one of Kakashi's feet and pin it to the ground before quickly doing the same to his other ankle. Then Sasuke came, with his hands locked in a tiger seal, and a sinister smile on his lips. Kakashi knew no one would have enough time to flee. Sasuke was already breathing fire, and at point-blank distance, no one could escape. Everything slowed down. He saw Naruto's legs tensing to propel him out of the way, but it would be too slow. 2 of his clones were reaching for a kunai to free him, the 3 others moving to form a protective barrier to gain him and Sakura a few more seconds, but it wouldn't be enough. Sakura was gathering some chakra for a kawarimi, a smug smirk on her lips, but she wouldn't have time to escape. Kakashi did the only thing he could think of. His hands blurred, reality came back to normal speed, and he spat a powerful jet of water, extinguishing the fire and nailing the Uchiha in the chest, sending him to the ground and interrupting the technique. Sakura failed to stop her kawarimi in time and puffed on the other side of the clearing, before running to Sasuke, screaming in worry. Naruto breathed in relief, relaxing his legs, while the kunai clones slashed the wires, freeing an irate Kakashi and the 3 others dispersed. Now free of his movements, Kakashi marched onto Sasuke with burning fury in his eye. Grabbing the Uchiha by the collar, he hefted him to eye level and glared at him. When Sakura began to scream at him, he gestured to Naruto, and the blonde incapacitated her with a chop to the neck. Now, you little shit, could you please explain why you were trying to kill your teammates? You said to come with the intent to kill, answered Sasuke with a smirk. And sacrifices have to be made. Sensei, what are your instructions? Asked Naruto, to divert Kakashi's attention from Sasuke before the Jonin did something he would regret. We report to Hokage-sama. Take Pinky. Naruto did just that and flung Sakura over his shoulder none too gently while Kakashi knocked Sasuke out and flung him over his own shoulder before walking away at a brisk pace. On the way to the tower, a few civilians demanded that Sasuke was released, only to be met with Kakashi's killing intent and threats of a visit to T&I for cooperation with a suspected traitor. That shocked a lot of people. Naruto's armor and Mempo certainly didn't help. When they finally reached the tower, people stopped opposing them. No sane ninja would try to stop an enraged Kakashi. Quickly, they reached the secretary's desk. "Kakashi-sama, Naruto-sama," said the man in confusion. "Am I to understand you wish to talk to Hokage-sama?" "Yes, and quickly," said Kakashi, trying to control the anger in his voice with only moderate success. The man hurriedly went to the door of the office, knocked, opened and popped his head inside before saying a few words. When he got his head out, he told them to go inside with a head movement. Kakashi opened the door and stepped inside, throwing Sasuke in front of the Hokage's desk, surprising the old man. While Naruto closed the door, Sarutobi tried to keep his features under control. On one hand he was shocked that Kakashi would do that, on the other hand he was overjoyed to see Sasuke finally getting what he had coming. He noticed Naruto putting Sakura down more gently. "Kakashi, may you explain why you acted in such a way?" "Hokage-sama, this filth tried to kill myself and his teammates. While I did say to come with the intent to kill, his plan was clearly to hold me off using his teammates before unleashing a large-scale fire technique on the group, leaving us with no time to escape." The Hokage took a moment to gather his thoughts. "I see." He snapped his fingers. Two Anbu appeared, bowing on one knee. "Take these two to T&I, and schedule a council meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone will want to know, and I'd rather chose the time myself than let them place the meeting at their convenience." The Anbu saluted and disappeared with their prisoners. Sarutobi sighed heavily. He had hoped for a quieter day. "Hokage-sama," said Kakashi, "no matter what you decide, I refuse to teach these two." However, Naruto proved far more promising, and moved to protect myself and Sakura with his clones, even though it could have led to his death. For this, I think he is qualified to become a shinobi of Konoha and would like to take him on as an apprentice. Sarutobi froze, looking at Kakashi in shock. He slowly nodded. "I see. What of Uchiha Sasuke? You know that, due to political reasons, we cannot send him back to the academy or simply expel him from the program. I am aware of this, but I simply refuse to teach this, Stain," said Kakashi with finality in his voice. "Very well," said Sarutobi. "I guess I'll have to find a teacher able to scare him enough to keep him in line," said the old Kage with a sigh. "So much work, so little time. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, why not use shadow clones?" A moment of silence ensued. Then, in a single moment, Sarutobi's head slammed on the desk, and his three helpers dropped the very heavy piles of paperwork they were carrying. The old Kage suddenly jumped on his desk, showing surprising energy for one his age, and raised his fist at the sky, weeping in anger. "Minato, you little brat. That was your secret. Why didn't you tell me?" As the Hokage began to bellow insults and curses aimed at his deceased successor, Kakashi signaled Naruto to exit the office. Naruto followed his teacher, wondering why only the Yondaime thought of this. Naruto was walking through the park where his way home was, back in his burnt orange kimono, enjoying the baffled looks of the population around him. He reached the portal and saw Hinata and her teacher coming his way from another direction. He smiled and waved at his fiancée. He still couldn't believe he was that lucky, and she waved back, a happy smile on her face. He admired the way her kimono hugged her developing but still alluring curves while staying modest. it gave her an air of royalty that aroused him to no end. Perhaps it was the need to see such a pure-looking girl indulge in carnal pleasure, or perhaps he just loved her like that. Yes, other girls could arouse him, physically at least, but so far he hadn't met another girl whose soul-dreamed image could get him to full mast. But while there was physical attraction, there was also the emotional part. She soothed him, quieted his fears and pains. Her small, almost hesitant smiles always awoke the colony of butterflies that seemed to sleep in his belly. Yes, she was his beloved, and he would do anything to have her by his side. Hinata finally reached him, but after this train of thoughts he felt the need to be tender and loving, so he claimed her lips softly before she could talk. While it was obvious she hadn't expected such a straightforward act, she didn't shy away from the kiss, far from that. She literally melted into his arms, kissing back. They enjoyed a few moments of this most enjoyable activity, feeling each other's love through the kiss, until the clearing of a throat ended the kiss. The two young lovers turned to the direction from which came the sound. Kurenai was looking at them with an embarrassed blush on her face. Could you two please keep that for when you're alone? Oh come on, it was just an innocent kiss. Whined Naruto. Can't I kiss my fiancé? Doing it in public like that is not proper. Because killing people via mind is proper. Don't try to deny it, that's what a genjutsu does. Kurenai, a blush still on her face, grunted. Anyway, Naruto-san, may we talk for a moment? Naruto nodded wearily and followed the crimson-eyed Jonin a bit away, under Hinata's watchful and slightly worried gaze. Once out of earshot, Kurenai turned to Naruto. How? Beg you pardon, how did you turn a sweet and respectable young lady like Hinata into a complete pervert? I didn't do anything, she was like that before, you just refused to see it. She wasn't like this, I know her. Believe what you will. Just answer this question, are you ashamed of her? If so, maybe you should try to slowly distance yourself from her, because it would hurt her and I don't want that. This being said, I wish you a good evening, said Naruto before bowing slightly and turning to join his fiancée, quickly leading her to the portal and zapping back to Whirlpool. Kurenai remained there for a few moments, thinking about what the young blonde had told her. Was she ashamed of Hinata? No, she simply couldn't bring herself to be. Maybe he was right, perhaps Hinata was like that from the start. Maybe she should open up a bit and see if there really was something to this Provenus thingy. Once on the castle side of the portal, Naruto pulled his beloved to him again, pressing his lips softly and lovingly against hers. Without anyone to interrupt them, Hinata gave into the kiss happily. After a minute or so of lip-locking, Naruto pulled back and gazed lovingly into her eyes. She smiled happily, but he could see some curiosity in her eyes. What did I do to deserve that? Just so I know what to do again. Nothing. Chuckle, I just thought about how wonderful you are and, well, I got a bit affectionate. He said with a smile. Well, I really like it, answered his precious heiress, burying her face in the crook of his neck, a blissful smile on her face. They stayed like that for some time before Hinata got her head out of his shoulder and gripped his hands. Then, with a smile, she led him to the dining room. They shared a simple meal, talking about their days. Hinata wanted nothing more than to maim the Uchiha for his stunt, but Naruto calmed her enough that she let it go. For now, Hinata's day had been far less exciting. They had been subjected to a tracking test, one they couldn't pass without working together, and with Shino around it was quickly exposed, resulting in the team passing almost effortlessly. Once the dinner was done, Naruto grasped Hinata's hand and led her to their bedroom. Both knew what was coming, and both craved it. The physical and emotional completeness that came with this act of love and lust was so beautiful, so perfect, they simply couldn't have enough of it. Though, Hinata wondered in which way her lover would take her. Would it be hard and fast, soft and loving, or maybe kinky? Though, after all the cuddling and kissing, she couldn't help but hope for some sweet, soft love-making. And her wish would be granted. As soon as they were near the bed, Naruto turned to her and claimed her lips in a slow, loving kiss, slowly passing his tongue on her lips. She granted him access, parting her lips to welcome Naruto into her mouth, playing with his tongue as she slipped her arms around his neck. She felt his hands caress her sides through the kimono, slowly moving to her back, untying the knot of her obi, letting the piece of fabric fall to the ground. Hinata's hands glided from his chest to his back, sliding down until she reached the black obi of his kimono, and untied the knot slowly. Once his sash was on the ground with hers, they opened each other's kimono, exposing the mesh shirts beneath. They came up for air, their hands pushing past the hem of the shirts in sync, before resuming the kiss. They pushed the kimono off of their beloved's shoulders, both garment hitting the ground at the same time. They interrupted the kiss just long enough to remove the mesh shirts, tossing them randomly, before mashing their lips together again, pressing their bodies together. Their hands went to the trousers, pushing them down, until they only wore their undergarments. Quickly, Naruto's hands found the clasp of her bra, snapping it open expertly. Quickly, the piece of fabric was discarded, unveiling her young but still bountiful chest, and it wasn't long until both her panties and his boxers met the ground. Hinata moved to sit, but Naruto's hands stopped her, making her wonder what he wanted to do to her. Naruto's hands down to her thigh and pulled them up, causing her legs to reflexively wrap around his waist. He was holding her just above his throbbing manhood, ready to impale her. He broke the kiss and looked at her in eyes, his gaze filled with lust, just as his member teased her moistened flower. "Put your hands on my shoulders, love," he said gently. Hinata obeyed, placing her hands on his shoulders and pulling back a bit. She had to admit that she had a nice view of his taut chest. Then, he impaled her. She moaned in delight as he felt him enter her so easily and so deeply. Slowly, he began to move her up and down his shaft, picking up speed until he was at a rhythm they both liked. "Do you like it, love?" he asked between two pants. Hinata looked at him through the haze of pleasure, and nodded, smiling widely at the delicious sensation coursing through her. "Good. This position, pants, is called Ascent to Desire. Pant, I found it in an old book pant called the Kama Sutra. Pant, I think I'll pant use a few others pant positions from this book." The prospect of enjoying more of those delicious positions made Hinata buck her hips, joining the rhythm. As the delicious friction increased, so did the pleasure, and their moans, and soon the room was filled with the scent of arousal and lovemaking. With a long drawn-out moan, Hinata climaxed, showing her pleasure-filled expression to her lover, as her womanly treasure enticed Naruto into giving up his seed. Naruto pulled her against his chest and kissed her. They remained like that, Naruto standing, Hinata wrapped around him, for a few moments, until Naruto simply couldn't stay up anymore. He went to the bed and sat on it, letting Hinata unwrap herself and crawl on the bed. Naruto crawled after her, settling beside her and wrapping her in his arms, spooning her. Then, as she drifted to sleep, Hinata felt her favorite stick slip between her lower lips and lay still there. She smiled. Naruto woke up feeling very comfortable. He opened his eyes to a mop of blue hair he recognized immediately. He smiled in happiness. He snuggled closer to her, and suddenly had to stifle a moan. Hinata, still sleeping, didn't stifle hers. That's when he remembered his last action before going to sleep. It seemed that his morning wood had found itself in a wonderful situation. He pondered his options for only a second before taking the only decision he could. He moved his arms from around her waist and cupped both of her massaging them softly, enjoying the quiet moans he got out of his sleeping lover. Then, he began to slowly rock his hips back and forth and kissed her neck sensually. He kept his pace even, trying to see if he could get her to peek in her sleep. However, that idea went down when Hinata's eyes fluttered open after he brushed against a particular spot. Yes, are trying to find all the ways to, wake me up with pleasure. She asked through her moans, enjoying the soft lovemaking. Maybe, my sweet Hina. He breathed in her ear, feeling the shudder that went down her back. Why, do you want me to stop? He asked teasingly, already knowing the answer. By no means, explore all you want. And Naruto did just that. One of his hands left Hinata's and descended upon the little bundle of nerve between her legs, softly rubbing it and eliciting pleasured mewls from the beautiful heiress. His mouth returned to her neck, kissing, licking. He upped his pace a bit, loving the way she shuddered against him. He began muttering loving words in her ear as he felt her walls spasming, and after a few more minutes of lovemaking, she tumbled over the edge with a long moan, muffled by her closed lips. They took a few minutes to catch their breath, still pressed against each other, enjoying the skin contact. Then, Naruto pulled out of his lover and kissed her cheek. He got up and helped her out of the bed, pulling her to him and into a fierce kiss. After a few moments of lip locking, he realized there was something he had failed to tell her in the last few days. Hinata-chan, I should have told you this sooner. I hope you can forgive me for being so late. I love you. Hinata smiled as she looked in his eyes. She could see the honesty in his eyes, and at long last her ultimate fears were quieted. I love you too, my Naruto-kun. She kissed him softly, and he answered in kind. When they pulled back, they smiled at each other, and walked together to the shower. After some innocent, for once fun, they got dressed and went to the portal, zapping back to Konoha. The two parted ways after a last kiss. Naruto made his way to the Hokage Tower, where he met Kakashi, who was surprisingly on time. I thought you were late to everything. I think that you deserve some respect as a fellow Ika enthusiast and as an excellent storyteller. Answered the eye-smiling Jonin. So here I am. But I have a reputation to keep, so Hokage-sama was kind enough to call the council 2 hours before the intended time. Yeah, the fact that they'll be too tired to put up much of a fight has nothing to do with that. Nope, absolutely nothing, answered the very cheerful Cyclops before leading his student inside the tower. They made their way to the council room and met the Hokage just as he was about to enter the room. Ah, you are here, good. Let's go in then. The old man opened the door and stepped inside, to a rather amusing view. Sum and Choza were exchanging raunchy jokes loudly. Shikaku exhibited the second Nara bloodline by sleeping peacefully through the ambient chaos. Inoichi was looking straight in the eyes of a civilian unblinkingly, making the poor man sweat up a storm. Shibi was busying himself by having his insects dance a three-dimensional ballet. Hiyashi enjoying the view while idly launching popcorn to any civilian that looked like they were falling asleep. But not too hard, just enough to leave a bruise. It should also be noticed that the civilians had casts around various parts of their bodies. When the Hokage came in, the civilians glared at the trio. May we know why you are so late, Hokage-sama? Asked the pink-haired woman, trying desperately to remain polite. I was waiting for Naruto and Kakashi. Answered the elder. I was waiting for Sensei. Supplied the younger. I was waiting for a black cat to cross my path so I could retrace it and be late. Answered Kakashi jovially. The shinobi side chuckled or laughed, the civilian, not so much. The Hokage ignored it altogether and simply went to sit before motioning for an anbu. Go fetch the prisoners. The masked ninja nodded, and disappeared just as Homura and Kaharu stepped in. Hello Hiruzen, how are you today? Asked Homura, sounding far nicer than he used to be in the last few, well, decades. This surprised Hiruzen pleasingly. Very well, and you? Quite well too, I feel strangely energetic. Kaharu giggled with a blush. I can attest to that, she said as they both sat. She looked around, surprised. Danzo isn't here. No, that's one of the first things we must discuss, said Sarutobi. The honored elder, Shimura Danzo, passed away this night. He was brutally murdered with a potato masher. Steen ch. Thought Naruto in anger. We also found the body of a former root Anbu next to Danzo. It is suspected that the root lost what little reason he had left and murdered Danzo. The root killed himself by slamming the handle of the masher through his own heart. He killed his former superior with a masher. He must really have hated him, said Choza. But why the masher? I mean, it usually is in a drawer in the kitchen, why not take the first thing that came to hand? No, the root came with the masher, answered Sarutobi with certainty. Why are you so certain? Asked Shikaku, still looking like he was sleeping. Actually, half of his brain power was dedicated to napping right now. Danzo had a loathing of potatoes. He particularly despised fries, said Homura. Blasphemy, bellowed Choza, fury written on his face. That man had no taste, commented Hiashi, who was coincidentally eating fries. From where he had pulled them, no one knew. Anyway, since the case is solved, we'll move on, said the Hokage. Just at this moment, the doors opened, and Sasuke and Sakura were led into the room by an Anbu squad. It is to be noted that Sakura was gagged. What? Why is my daughter led here like a prisoner? Shrieked the pink-haired woman, revealing without a doubt her link with Sakura. Well, she was brought with her teammate after his questionable behavior yesterday. And why was she taken by Anbu? Pressed the woman further. An old law from the Shadaime. Should the occasion arise, we must search for, and I quote, a goddamn off switch for their annoying voices. Quote end. Sarutobi then produced an old-looking scroll and showed that it was indeed a law ordering to look for a goddamn off switch to the annoying voice of the Haruno family, signed by the first. Old man, isn't it a shinobi matter too? Asked Naruto, hoping he wouldn't have to suffer from the civilians' idiocy. It is, said a sadistic-looking Hiruzen, looking hungrily at the civilians. I'm just waiting for them to step out of line. Let it be known, had the village been named after its civilians, it would have been renamed the village hidden in the shaking leaves. Anyway, said Sarutobi, turning back to normal. Uchiha Sasuke, step forward. Said Uchiha walked 3 steps, an arrogant look on his face. Until an Anbu uttered one name. Anko. Immediately, Sasuke tried to disappear under a table, only to be kicked out by the civilian counselor that already hid there. Sasuke was looking around in absolute terror. He almost looked like a mouse going paranoid over a cat that wasn't there. It amused Sarutobi greatly. Sasuke, look at me, he ordered, and the Uchiha managed to regain some composure. Now, explain your actions. I did what I could to ensure the success of the mission. I was facing a superior opponent. The only way I could win was by using every tool I had to my advantage. And that meant sending your teammates to their death. If necessary, yes. So you would have agreed if you had been among the sacrificed? Asked Sarutobi. Sasuke looked at him like he was stupid. Of course not. I'm the last Uchiha in this village. I'm too important to sacrifice. Then what makes you think you can sacrifice your teammates? The Dobi is an incompetent pervert, and Sakura is a fangirl. Answered Sasuke flatly. He didn't pay any attention to the crushed expression on Sakura's face. Actually, Naruto is the last of his clan, making him just as important as you. Pointed Sarutobi. And he beat you in taijutsu, so he isn't incompetent like you pretend. As for Sakura, she is human, that alone should forbid you from sending her to her death without considering other options. Now, could you tell me why I shouldn't expel you from the shinobi program? And don't tell me it's because you're an Uchiha, I simply don't care about that. Said Sarutobi in a calm voice. Sasuke gulped, trying desperately to find a way to remain in the ninja force without flaunting his status or indirectly threatening the Hokage. He wasn't stupid enough to do something like that. Finally, he swallowed his pride and prayed that what he had in mind would work and not backfire too much. With proper guidance, I might be able to better myself. The words left a sour taste in his mouth, but he had no choice. To kill Itachi, he needed to be a shinobi. For a moment, Sarutobi seemed to think, then he nodded. Come to the tower at the end of the week, I'll have a teacher for you. Now go. Sasuke bowed and left, quickly followed by Sakura, who was looking all lost. Is there anything else? Asked Kakashi. Sarutobi shook his head. Good, now if you'll allow it, I'll take my student and leave. Hiruzen nodded, and then began to look at the civilians with a malevolent smile. Hiyashi gave popcorn and soda to all the other clan heads. The show would be good. It was nearly noon, her meal would soon come. She looked at the window forlornly. They had decided to taunt her yet again, leaving it partially open. The glass and wood were reinforced by seals, making sure that her meager strength couldn't break it, and her door was tightly locked, giving her no chance to escape this prison she loathed. Her sole reprieve was the little orange books given to her by that blue-haired girl. She had never talked to her, only caught a glimpse of her, but it was enough. She knew someone out there was trying to help her, it warmed her heart. With a sigh, she returned to her painting, depicting once more a scene of Ika Ika. It was the only occupation she really had after all. That, and fantasizing that someone would free her from this hellish life and let her explore the world outside. There were so many things she wanted to do. Look once again upon the Hokage monument, taste that ramen food she once heard someone shout about, see the ocean, have a threesome. With a sigh, she tried to take her mind off of those matters. Until she heard a very low moan. She didn't exactly have a lot of ways to pass the time, so she had trained her senses, even using what little chakra she had to help. Her sight was perfect, her nose about twice as efficient as a normal human nose, and her hearing was also improved. Which mean, she could hear people coming. Yeah, it was about lunchtime, but for the frigid bitch that brought food to moan. Something was going on. She smiled. Maybe she had forgotten where she was, or maybe she thought that her hearing wouldn't pick the sounds. Anyway, it would give her a very good distraction. A new moan, strange she noted, was heard, along with the sound of fingers moving on, into something wet. Was she touching herself? Now, how about you finally tell me? Murmured a velvety voice that she quickly identified as female. Ooh, this was getting good. And no, never, why you won't get to her. Came the bitch's answer. In a way, it excited her, but another part of her mind was wary. Why was she resisting? Who was this mystery woman looking for? Suits yourself, love, I'll just you in every room of this isle until I find Yaku-chan. Answered the velvety voice. Now, Yakumo was positive that the unknown woman was looking for her. And honestly, she wanted to be found. Yakumo untied her obi, opened her robes, and let her pants fall to her ankles. She quickly snapped her bra open, and let her panties fall down her legs, before caressing one of her s with one hand, placing the other at her entrance. Arousal began to flood her as she heard her warden's moans and a shoji door open. Oh my, she's not here. Looks like we'll begin our fun. Yakumo was thrilled by the moans of pleasure that came from the beginning of the corridor, and she caressed herself for the better part of 2 hours to these screams of ecstasy, reveling in the symphony of flesh hitting flesh. When her door finally opened, she was exhausted, but so was her jailer. The brown-haired woman just collapsed on the ground, wearing only her Jonin vest and a shirt that was pulled above her nicely sized S, gasping for air. "N no more, P please, I can't." The would-be abductor stepped inside, revealing a purple-haired woman wearing a tan trench coat, a mesh suit that was currently widely opened, allowing access to her perfect S, and a bright pink strap-on. For a reason she couldn't understand, the fact that the strap-on was pink was especially arousing to Yakumo. The woman was drenched in sweat and was breathing heavily, but she looked like she could still go for a long time. She quickly located Yakumo due to her panting, and smiled widely when she saw the brown-haired heiress, still mostly. "Well, looks like I finally found you, Yaku-chan. I had a little talk with your uncle. I don't think he'll walk straight for a few weeks, and I'm positive he now has a phobia of snakes." The implications only made Yakumo smile widely. "Now come on, we got a few years of training to make up for, and a few things to explain." Yakumo nodded, happy that she could finally leave this place, and managed to get to her feet, swaying a bit. The woman helped her get all of her things while fondling her a bit from time to time, just for the fun of it, not that Yakumo protested, instead she was quite grateful and enjoyed it a lot, making it known vocally. Once everything was gathered, Yakumo made herself presentable and followed the woman that was now officially one of her two favorite persons on this earth, the other being her blue-haired benefactor. She was quite surprised to see that her savior didn't bother with either closing her fishnet suite or removing the strap-on, but when Unkai tried to stop them, it proved to be very entertaining, especially when he shrieked like a little girl and fled as fast as his limping would allow when her hopefully future teacher stroked the piece of pink plastic. When they exited the compound, the woman simply placed a hand on her shoulder and sunshined them both to an unknown but quite large apartment. "Make yourself comfortable, sweetie. This is the living room, the kitchen's obviously on the other side of the counter. First door on the right is the bathroom, second is the dungeon, third is my room. On the left, first door is the training room for light things, like lifting some weight or such, second room is my little library. You'll have a shelf for yourself, though I think we got a lot of books in common, and last door is your new room," she said, casually removing her clothing until she was simply in the. Yakumo looked at her in wonder. She felt her heart beating faster, both because she liked what she saw and because of hope. I don't have to be always clothed," she asked shakily, hoping against hope that she could finally attain the ultimate level of comfort, in her opinion, that was ness without someone ordering her instantly to put some clothes on. "Nope. Being fun," answered her savior with a wide smile. Yakumo smiled as widely as she could. She already loved this person, even if she didn't know their name. "All right, kiddo. Go put your stuff in your room, we'll talk after that, K." Yakumo nodded and quickly went to her room, throwing her stuff on the bed and quickly hopping out of her clothing before rushing back into the living room, finding her host sensually sprawled out on the couch. Yakumo happily sat on one of the love seats, enjoying the contact of the soft fabric against her skin. Then she remembered that she hadn't had time to clean herself and prepared to get up before she stained the fabric. However, her host seemed to have guessed what she thought. "Don't worry, they're all cum-proof. Now, let's go with introduction. I am Mitarashi Anko, your future teacher and your roommate. Pleased to meet ya, Yaku-chan," she said with a saucy grin. "I'm happy to meet you too, Anko-sensei," answered Yakumo with a smile. "All right, sweetie. There are a few things to explain first," said Anko, looking a bit more serious. "First off, You were supposed to receive mental training in order to defeat a split personality that took control of your powers to kill your parents. Yeah, I know, far-fetched, but believe me, it's far from the craziest thing there is in this world. Second, you were supposed to be kept fit, so that once that split personality was defeated, you could be sent right into the shinobi program. As it is, it'll take some time to get you where you need to be physically, but I'm pretty sure we can beat your crazy part soon. Any question? What was the role of Yuhi Kurenai in all that? Asked Yakumo. Kur-chan chickened out and has been beating herself up on that for quite some time now. Last time we got wasted, she was crying 'cause she let poor Yaku-chan all alone. Though, you'll excuse me if I don't regret it, she can get so wild when she's drunk. Said Anko lustily, before pouting. Why'd I only get her when she's drunk? So, she just took the coward's way out. Harsh way to put it, but yeah. It's kinda ironic. She's a pro of genjutsu, yet she falls to illusions she created herself. She even believes her little Hyuga protege isn't a pervert. Yakumo felt a pang of hurt and jealousy. Had she been replaced so easily? She breathed deeply to calm herself. She'd have the occasion to settle things down between her and her former sensei. Her train of thoughts was interrupted when Anko spoke again. Though, in her defense, she tried to convince the old man to put you on her team, and she immediately recommended you when she heard a room for another genin had opened. See, she's not that bad, said the purple-haired woman with a smile. This revelation calmed Yakumo and warmed her heart. At least, her old sensei hadn't forsaken her. Now, said Anko, once again cutting into her thoughts. Let's see if you can beat that crazy half of yours, K. Yakumo nodded and began meditating, hoping she'd find a way to the recess of her mind to confront the creature that lurked there. It had to be there, Anko-sensei said so, and she trusted her wholly. Yakumo opened her eyes in frustration. Nothing seemed to have changed. Then she was tackled to the strangely comfortable ground, a pair of lips slamming against hers. The person pulled back and revealed, to her shock, an almost perfect clone of herself with brown skin, equally, and looking horny as hell. Please Yakumo-chan, I'll do anything, just, please take me. The brown look-alike stuttered in need. Yakumo was stunned for a moment, then she smiled. With her hand, she cupped the look-alike's cheek. What's your name? Iido. She answered hesitantly. Anko-sensei told me you used our powers to kill mom and dad. Is this true? She asked softly. Ido bowed her head in shame. Why yes. I'm so sorry, I was so stupid. She began to cry. I'm so sorry, please don't hate me. She whimpered. Yakumo remained calm, digesting it all. In a way, she was guilty. Ido was a part of herself. She stroked her cheek lovingly. It's okay, she said, making Ido brighten. But I'll have to punish you, you realize that? Ido nodded. She knew it would come to this. Good girl, now please me, said Yakumo with a smile. Immediately, Ido dived for her chest, licking an ing, causing Yakumo to moan in appreciation. Ido caressed the mounds for a few moments before kissing her way down Yakumo's body until she reached the pulsating womanhood of her double, giving it a tentative lick, making the main personality moan in pleasure. Emboldened by the positive answer, Ido dived into Yakumo's womanhood, licking dutifully, inserting her tongue in the moist crevice, her hands flying to the chest of the moaning girl and kneading the growing mounds. Yakumo wasn't used to this kind of ministration, so she reached her peak quite quickly, moaning out in satisfaction. She took some time to gather her breath, then sat upright and looked at Ido, who was looking at her nervously and hopefully. Yakumo smiled before pulling her into a kiss. Good girl, she said. But you'll have to obey me, alright? Yes, Yakumo-sama, said the darker of the two submissively. Yakumo smiled in satisfaction and concentrated on the outside world, quickly coming back in control of her body only to find herself sprawled on her seat, Anko's head between her legs, the very pleasurable afterglow of orgasm still flowing through her veins. Now she understood why she lasted such a small time. Sensei. She moaned as Akko gave another lick, causing the purple-haired woman to look up. Ah, back already. You looked like you had fun, so I decided to join in. She said with a cheeky smile. So, how'd it go? Yakumo answered with a smile on her own. Let's just say that loving oneself has a whole new meaning. Sakura was in deep thought. That afternoon, she had determined that Sasuke was just being his cool self in the council room, and that she should admire him all the more for it. Thus, his comment about her being expendable had been forgiven, then forgotten. So, when her mother brought her a note from Sasuke asking her nicely, more like ordering her very rudely, to come to the Uchiha district, she went with a spring in her steps. She hadn't stopped when she had seen Ino at the gate of the compound, showing quite proudly a note almost identical to hers. Neither had she been put off when Sasuke had told them both to come in and led them silently to his room. When he had told them to undress, they had obeyed, blushing due to embarrassment. They had even gone along when he had told them to make out, saying that the last to come would go first with him. Sadly for Sakura, she had lost. Once it was done, Sasuke began riding Ino without waiting for her to catch her breath, thrusting mercilessly inside of her. She had tried to make it look like she enjoyed everything, but Sakura had seen the tears in her eyes when Sasuke had ripped her hymen. Sasuke had satisfied himself. Then he had taken Sakura. It had been painful but, like Ino, she had played the part of being happy and pleasured. Sasuke had satisfied himself, and while she felt some gratification at the warmth in her belly, she still was disappointed that her first time had been kissless and brutal. But it had to be the way true men did it, right? Sakura, whispered Ino, in an effort not to wake up the sleeping Sasuke. Yeah, answered the Pinkett in the same tone of voice. Say, can we be friends again? Sakura looked at her, smiled and nodded. No matter how unpleasant her first time was, at least she could restore her friendship with Ino. Iruka was roof-hopping. He wanted to see what was the result of the council meeting involving 3 of his former students. Then, he saw it, something that had resulted, a year or so ago, into a complete female riot. Naruto, with a fishing pole. The gray-haired man looking over him had to be his teacher, and the fact he didn't stop him was quite worrying. Quickly he ran to stop the teen, but he arrived too late. Just late enough to have panties shoved in his hands, see the teen and his teacher disappear in a blur of speed, and hear an enraged scream. Then, the one he didn't want to see right now appeared. Mitarashi Anko. Her expression of unbridled fury descended into shock and confusion. Iruka-kun? She asked in bewilderment. Iruka began blabbering, trying to tell the beautiful woman that he didn't do it, but before he could explain correctly, she smiled in a way that made his heart skip a bit, and his pants tightened dramatically. Well, I didn't expect you to be so direct, she said in a low voice. She came closer to him, pressing her body against his and almost making his pants blow up. Not that I complain. How about I see you at your house tonight? She whispered in his ear sensually, effectively shutting down Iruka's higher brain functions. He only nodded dumbly. Anko smiled alluringly before turning back, walking to the edge of the roof, looking above her shoulder and sending him a lustful look before finally jumping down. Iruka finally noticed that he still had her panties in his hand. His hormones shot through the roof while howling madly and performing various acrobatic figures. Then he darted to his apartment to prepare for any situation. Naruto and Kakashi had parted way a few minutes ago, they were still laughing at the prank they had pulled on Iruka. Naruto had some regrets. Iruka was an overall nice guy, and that Anko lady was quite volatile according to some things he had seen, but hopefully his old teacher's charm and charisma would save him from emasculation and instead result in a wild and passionate night. Whistling happily, Naruto walked to the park where his portal back home was. He looked up at the sky, the evening was beginning. Then he saw Iruka passing above him, a wide smile on his face. Hey, success. He finally reached the portal and went home. He had barely stepped out of the transportation seal that he felt two very familiar arms wrap around him and lips he knew so well press against his. Without hesitations, he kissed Hinata back lovingly, pulling her closer to his body. Before things could get too frisky, Hinata pulled back and looked in his eyes. "We have guests," she said apologetically. "Guests? Who?" They came back with stench. They don't appear in the perv," she said nervously. Naruto nodded and followed her as she led him through the castle. He reached a room where he saw dozen upon dozen of ninja, all of them in the same black cloak and with featureless masks. When he stepped into the room, they all kneeled. He looked at them in wonder, asking himself what to do. Then, a gray-haired boy rose to his feet and came to stand before him, bowing low. "Uzumaki-sama, we are the root division of Anbu, trained by Danzo-sama to defend Konoha from the shadows," he said, but Naruto noted some anger in his voice at the mention of Danzo. "With Danzo-sama's deed, we gathered to determine who we should serve to protect Konoha's interests better, and we have come to the conclusion that helping you restore the power of the Uzumaki clan would be the most beneficial act for the village. As such, we are at your service and will obey your every order." Naruto grinned widely. Now he had his own personal army to corrupt. "Good. First things first, you're all gonna go through a crash course on the joys of." That caused many to look at him in surprise, and the boy in front of him to grin widely in excitement and anticipation. "And whip those emotionless masks off your face. I wanna work with humans, not machines." Many seemed uncomfortable, but there were some that looked pleased. That's when Naruto heard the boy that had talked in their name mutter something. "Barely met him, already love him. Now to get some." Shin opened his eyes and groaned quietly. He looked around himself, and a smirk came to his face. Their new employer had commissioned for them a month-long trip, in some of the biggest red lights district of Fire Country. He looked above the whore lying partially on his chest and found Sai on the other side, looking positively out of it. And boos tend to do that. He could hear some of his colleagues, both male and female, still hard at work learning. Such dedication, he truly admired that. He snickered. Life was in good. Naruto walked to the training ground assigned to him and Kakashi, whistling happily. His new agents had left yesterday on their educational trip, meaning they already had their first lesson. Hopefully, the disturbing hole in the perv would be gone by the time they came back. He arrived at the training ground and saw Kakashi, leaning against a post, his nose buried in one of the books. "Yo sensei, so, what are we gonna do?" "Training my pupil, training. Taijutsu first. Without the armor. Then, weightlifting, endurance, speed, I'll try helping with Kenjutsu, and lastly we'll keep some time to study on Fuinjutsu." "Sounds good. Sounds very good," answered Naruto with a smile. Iruka opened his eyes tiredly and tried to determine why he was so damn sore. He felt a warm breath on his chest, and when he looked up he saw the purple head of his now official girlfriend. 2 days since their first night, and Iruka honestly didn't care if they were taking things too fast. He had always had a thing for Anko, and honestly it was the proximity of her situation and Naruto's, as pariahs, that had led him to giving the boy a chance. And that same boy had given him a chance with his old crush. Karma. Yeah, Seemed like Anko was waking up. Hey Ru-kun. What time is it? Around 7:30 Ko-chan. Ah crap. Can't stay. Gotta prepare for team meeting. She said sleepily. He pulled her into a quick kiss, the smile that grew on her lips making his pride swell. Well, go and prepare. How about I take you out tonight? I know a good restaurant, if you want. Yeah, she said with a smile. Ah, might as well get up. She climbed out of bed, stretching in a very sensual way for Aruka's pleasure, before gathering her stuff, blowing a last kiss to Aruka and sunshining home. As she appeared in her living room, she noticed Yakumo passed out on the couch, a dildo up both her holes, a smile on her lips, and a porn movie on the screen. A finished porn movie. She gently shook her student awake, giggling slightly when she heard lewd mutterings come from the young girl. When Yakumo was finally somewhat aware, Anko explained the situation. Okay Yaku-chan, we're gonna take a shower and head to the training grounds, gotta meet our new team. A shower? Like, hot lesbian kinky type of shower? Asked Yakumo hopefully. Anko smiled widely and kissed her straight on the lips. Got your answer? She asked with a saucy grin. Yakumo answered with her own grin. Sasuke was annoyed. He wanted that teacher to come, and fast, but he or she was nowhere to be seen. Actually, he hoped the teacher would be female, then he'd charm her and punish her for making him wait. A dark and lustful chuckle escaped him. Then, he felt two hands fall on his shoulders, and an impressive and squishy rack press against his back. That about summed up the good news. What are you laughing at, Sasu-chan? Asked a voice he had come to fear. Slowly, he turned his head, and looked into the most predatorial brown eyes he had ever seen. He whimpered pathetically. Now, said Anko ominously. Let's begin with the training. 3 weeks since graduation. It had been quite hectic, but it was something Hinata could live with. Her time with Naruto had been delicious. They made love almost daily, in plenty of fun positions, with a varying number of clones. For more fun, Hinata had learned the shadow clone technique after the chakra well had been repaired in the Uzumaki castle. A nifty little thing, the chakra well. According to Gnarl, it drew natural energy from the environment and converted it into chakra to fill the reserves of the people near it. It had proved useful, since it allowed Hinata to learn the chakra-intensive technique safely, and had subsequently increased her reserves. She now had enough chakra to make 3 clones, an impressive feat for a genin like her. Of course, Naruto had been very pleased with her success, and had showed his satisfaction with a wild clone orgy, with at least 5 Naruto for each Hinata. The young Hyuga still couldn't help but smile when she thought of that orgasmic night. Sadly, not everything was good. Sasuke had begun betting his fan club, and had become even smugger because of that. He could boast, and did so loudly, a half-hour of uninterrupted before having to take a break. Hinata personally found that laughable, but that was understandable since her fiancé was a god able to go at it for 3 hours of intensive-ing without even a single break. Of course, after that he needed a good rest, but hell, so did she. Ino and Sakura had become close again, and more than once Hinata could have sworn that the two were about to kiss, but she could have been wrong. Hinata didn't know who were Sasuke and Sakura's sensei and last teammate, and she didn't care that much. Right now, she was with her team on a C-rank mission, the first delivered to a team of her class mind you. Kurenai had made it quite clear that she would mercilessly gloat about it to her colleagues, and especially to her boyfriend Asuma. Hinata smiled slightly at this. She knew Kurenai had loosened up a lot after her talk with Naruto, and she was immensely thankful for it. Her team life was far better thanks to that. She also suspected that it had to do with a good longing from Asuma. She looked at the ancient temple, They had been sent to investigate after these ruins had suddenly sprung up from the earth. The preliminary analysis team hadn't found anything suspicious, no chakra residues, no traps, nothing, just old, rotten scrolls and strange devices far past salvage point. The reason her team had been sent was because it would give them some experience, kind of like a training trip to prepare for future missions. A low C class, but a C class nonetheless. So, Sensei, what are we to do exactly? Asked Kiba, already visibly bored. Write down what we can make of the sculptures, see if we can salvage anything that could bring any useful information about the place, try to determine what cult the temple is linked to, and of course search for any secret passage leading to any supposedly cursed goodies we could sell to obsessed collectors. The village is sending us to find cursed goodies to sell. No, that's just pocket money. I like the sound of that, said the Inuzuka with a greedy smile. Say Hinata, could you use your Byakugan to find anything shiny? On it, answered the Hyuga pleasantly. She honestly didn't need it. Her family was filthy rich, and so was her fiancé thanks to the vault full of gold bars they had found in the castle, but she liked the thrill. Then she frowned. Something is blocking off my Byakugan. Looks like the stone has some energy coursing through it that blocks my eyes. She deactivated her dojutsu and looked at her team. Kurenai didn't look pleased, and not just because she wouldn't get her millennia-old earrings easily. I see. Kiba, any new smell coming from the temple? Nah, only the first recon team. Nothing else. Oh, wait. There's a squirrel. I'd say on the first floor. First turn on the right after leaving the stairs. You can honestly say that with just a quick whiff? Asked Kurenai, surprised. You'd be surprised by the Inuzuka training. Answered Kiba dismissively. Anyway, nothing human or chakra using. Just dust, filth, old bones and the occasional rodent and insect. I think there's an ant colony in the south wall. Interesting. I shall try to communicate with it. Why? Because the colony's memory might be old enough to tell us more about the place. Interjected Shino. You're the specialist man, answered Kiba. He had stopped jumping about 2 weeks ago. They made their way inside, and immediately, Hinata felt a familiar energy in the place. This place may have been linked to a fertility cult. The good kind. What makes you say that? And what do you mean by the good kind? Asked Kiba. I'm talking about the kind where sacrificing a virgin meant ing them senseless on an altar while the rest of the cult was having an orgy before each member had a turn with the former virgin. The perv is strong in this place, but there is another energy with it, different, yet the same, it's hard to explain. Hinata looked at her team, and smiled. Kurenai was slightly aroused by the mental images she had conjured. Kiba had a killer boner, and Shino was blushing. Hinata, how could you deduce the cult's practices? Asked Kurenai. I didn't, it was a wild guess. There could be several explanations. Such as? Asked Shino hesitantly. Well, it could be the harem of a particularly vigorous dynasty, an old sacred gathering of perverted shamans, even a monastery of monks and nuns intent on reaching illumination through UAL pleasure. Who knows? What I can say is that there was muching done here, and for a very long time. Hinata made her way to a wall and brushed the dust and cobwebs, revealing a bas-relief showing a man having his head by a buxom woman, another such woman kissing him and yet another kissing his neck. See, was involved. Interesting. Hinata, look at all the sculptures and try to determine exactly what this temple was about. Shino, go see that colony and see what it can tell you. Kiba, you're with me, we're building camp. After that, we'll go through the clatter around the temple, hopefully we'll get some shiny goodies the previous team missed. They all began their assigned task, and Hinata was more and more fascinated. From what she could gather, this used to be a stronghold belonging to an order of very active warrior monks and nuns, and according to the frescoes, harems were not uncommon in the order. These monks apparently had been among the followers of the Sage of Six Path, bringing down many enemies and fending off invaders from overseas while the sage took down the Jubi. A few low reliefs even showed some of the female members of the order leading minions to battle, indicating that the Uzumaki harem tradition predated the clan. On a wall a bit later, she saw a representation showing a meeting between the warrior monks, dressed in large robes, and a massive man in full armor, minions and samurai behind him. The symbol of the spiral was clearly seen on the samurai. The next bas-relief showed them celebrating with a feast, then an orgy. Obviously the order was an old ally of the Uzumaki. That was when things took a turn for the worse. The sculptures gradually became rougher, less detailed, as if the adepts of the temple hadn't had enough time to make them as detailed as the previous. They depicted the rise of a man from the monks' ranks, his eyes bearing the pattern of the Sharingan. The man began turning men and women to his side, waging war against the original order for reasons that weren't inscribed. The monks of the order were shown, fighting the renegades and the Uchiha clan next to the Senju, but at each new battle shown, the numbers of the Senju and monks fell, until only remained a few monks with their strange swords, and a handful of Senju. The next low relief showed the Uchiha army, facing off against the remains of the Senju and monks, with the shadow of an overlord watching over the field, his face hidden under a mempo depicting a snarling boar. The last battle was detailed in several scenes, showing the charge of the Uchiha army, the sudden appearance of the minions in Uzumaki, the way the Uchiha crashed against the lines of the Sons of Whirlpool, the overlord using techniques to bend the earth and air to his will, calling down lightning and fire upon the bearers of the fan, enraging the nearby river and making it flood the land, seizing the Uchiha and their followers. The overlord reached the Uchiha renegade monk and broke his spine, snapping the man in half like a mere twig, crushing the Uchiha army. The next scene showed the battlefield, ravaged and covered in bodies. The scene was more detailed than the previous ones and most importantly, was carved on a larger wall, giving it an incredible impact. On the field of battle, countless bodies lay broken, and Hinata could almost make out the face of each dead among the countless crushed minions. Many bore the attire of the Uchiha warriors, some were Uzumaki warriors, and some more were Senju fighters. The monks shown in the previous scenes, so few that they were individualized, laid strew across the battlefield, broken. Hinata felt her heart clench, identifying each of them, the tall man with a smile, the short woman with long hair, the thin bearded man, and in the middle of this sea of corpse, a single monk was prostrated, the overlord standing behind him, his hand on his shoulder. The next scene showed the survivor, old and broken, burying his brothers and sisters. Hinata looked at the base of the wall, and saw a single human skeleton laying there. Propped against the wall, it looked so lonely, despair radiated from the old, long decayed body, but also a faint trace of hope. Respectfully, she kneeled next to the dried bones and spoke softly. "Don't worry, monk-san. You will be buried with your brothers and sisters. Maybe we can even bring your order back if we find enough salvageable scrolls. You certainly look like honorable persons, and I'm sure Naruto-kun would help. He's the last Uzumaki, you know." Of course, the dead didn't answer, but the aura of despair seemed to fade, and be replaced by contentment. Maybe she was imagining things. Quietly, she gathered the bones, and prepared to take the corpse outside for burial. Kiba sighed happily. The tents were pitched, there was firewood for the night, the river was located, and he had managed to catch a few rabbits for lunch and dinner. Hell, he had even managed to find a few berry bushes and aromatic herbs. And because it was better when camp smelled nice, he had taken a few wild flowers and tied them to the top of each tent. They were out in the sun, but with the trees and walls nearby, the wind didn't reach camp, meaning the flowers would emit their smell and it would accumulate here until they had a nice background flowery smell to their camp. Perfect if you asked him. It felt homey. Kurenai was looking around the place, visibly satisfied. The mission was supposed to last a whole month. They were in safe territory, well settled, and in a place notorious for its nice weather and reasonable temperatures. That meant she could sunbath between training sessions and search expeditions in the temple. Maybe she could even get the boys away while she and Hinata did some sunbathing. No doubt both of their men would like the results. Kiba's initiative to place flowers in the camp had been a nice surprise. It would make their stay all the more enjoyable. Her train of thoughts was broken when she saw Hinata leaving the temple with a bag of what seemed to be bones. Hinata, these are the remains of the last occupant of the temple. Please help me, I wish to bury him. Kurenai and Kiba looked at each other and shrugged before grabbing shovels and moving to help the young Hyuga. Once it was done, Kurenai asked Hinata what she had found, and the teen proceeded to explain. So, they were pervy monks that were allied with the Uzumaki. It seems so, answered Hinata. And they died off after battling the Uchiha? Asked Kurenai incredulously. Yes, alongside the Senju. So, no shiny goodies? Asked Kurenai depressively. Quite the opposite. The order was rich and I think I know where we can get some interesting goodies. Yes, shouted Kurenai and Kiba, promptly following the exclamation with a high five. Shino was fascinated. The ant colony was century-olds, and had developed a collective consciousness, much like the Aburame hives. He could actually hold a complete conversation with the ants' colony through pheromones. Though it remained highly practical, the colony was also very helpful when it came to information on the temple. It had established itself there when the temple was still occupied by humans, and could report a high concentration of UAL pheromones for most of the period the temple was inhabited. Then, a period of aggressivity, then abandonment of the temple, before a single person came back and died. Interesting. But also quite depressing. Mostly because the only one Shino could actually have a conversation with was an older that shit ant colony. With a sigh, Shino got to his feet. Then, he felt something on his shoulders, like a weight that only bore on his mind, but that his flesh could feel. I was waiting for you. Kasuo had a shitty life, plain and simple. He was a low-ranking chunin in the Mist Village, and had been assigned a task worse than guard duty at the gate, guard duty at a small warehouse that hadn't seen action in ever. Even during the Civil War no one had even thought to consider the possibility of involving even remotely the warehouse. With a heavy sigh, he wondered what deity hated him. His opinion, however, changed when he noticed the form of a very lightly clothed woman coming closer. Please, help me. She said, shivering under the rain. My husband threw me out in my nightclothes. I'm sea cold. Kasuo was a gentleman of course, so he quickly stepped aside and allowed her in the small, but heated, room where he did his jobs. The woman smiled gratefully at him, quickly stepping inside. Are you alright? Asked Kasuo, quickly preparing a mug of coffee for her. I don't know. She mumbled, still shivering. Thankfully, they were in the warm rain season. The clouds passed above an active volcano that warmed the water, so the risks of becoming ill were small. I don't know where to go. She mumbled sadly. He's been cheating on me. She said, tears coming to her eyes. She began crying. Kasuo sat her on a chair, sitting next to her and wrapping his arms around her, blessing the fact he had always been good when it came to social interactions. There, calm down. I'm friend with a good lawyer. If you want, tomorrow, after we buy you some new clothes, we can go see him. And don't worry about a place to stay, you can stay with me, I have a guest room in my apartment. R really? B but, why? We barely met. We don't even know each other's name, said the woman in bewilderment. She had thought the man would take advantage of her, and instead here he was, being helpful, charming, and an overall nice guy. Well, let's change that, said Kasuo with a smile. My name is Mishi Kasuo. He extended his hand, and she tentatively took it. M. Moto Kasumi. Slowly, she began to lean forward, and felt happy he didn't move. She placed her lips upon his, and felt a connection. Maybe he was the one. Shin lowered his binoculars, and bumped fist with sigh. The plan was a success. Operation Get Two Sad People Laid was an utter success. It hadn't been hard to manipulate a few events to reach this result, and a compatibility test established by one of their member had shown these two had a 95% chance to find happiness. Considering Kasuo's shirt had just traveled from one end of the room to the other, it seemed accurate enough. He looked at the infiltration team, and saw them casually leaving the warehouse, like it was normal to leave an official building while carrying a minion hive. The infiltration team calmly made their way to their position, placing the hive on the temporary portal. It disappeared in a flash of red, and one by one, the men and women of the squad stepped on the platform, following the hive. Shin was the last to go, and before stepping upon the rune-engraved stone, he looked one last time at the warehouse, and smiled at the sounds of passion he could faintly hear. Good luck you two. And good too. Torun was a proud member of the Aburame clan, but also a root agent. And though he was surprised with his new leader's methods, he could hardly complain. He certainly had a lot of fun. He looked at his friend, Yamanaka Fu, and nodded. The operation was launched. Everywhere throughout Kumo, bombs detonated, liberating clouds of confetti that fell on the streets. A complete army of hookers swarmed the streets, courtesy of a happy and stupidly rich client of Kumo. Many would get lucky on this day. Using the confusion, the root agent sneaked to the warehouses and quickly evacuated both of the hives that were in the possession of Kumo, taking a few more goodies from Uzushio with them too. Then, they smiled to each other, and joined the giant orgy that was taking place in the streets. After a perfected executed mission, they could have a lot of fun, right? Poor Rakage would suffer greatly from the headaches this surprise event caused. Hitsumi sighed. She had to be picked for the most ungrateful work. She led her squad through the ruins of Yugakure. Since the Jashin cult had gone crazy and slaughtered everyone, the village was abandoned, and no one came here, mostly because of what the attack had left behind. Lazily, she threw a kunai that nailed one of the deformed creatures through its still mostly human forehead, ending it. Reports of these things' strength were greatly exaggerated. Finally they reached the ruined warehouse, and quickly threw the portal gem on the ground, creating the temporary portal. They went in, retrieved the poison hive, and placed it on the portal, along with most of the content of the warehouse. Then, they prepared to comb the city for shiny goodies, as the tradition dictated, but were interrupted by, of all things, a group of cats. A large group of cats. With one particularly large house cat, with mean red eyes and a strange pattern on its forehead, like a triangle in a circle. Suddenly, said, cat, talked, and in creepy voice too. Humans, I am Jashin, and you are on my territory. Explain yourselves. Hitsumi swallowed. She really had the worst of luck. Naruto zapped back home, sighing. With Hinata away, life was boring. Hopefully the 3 recovery missions he sent would bring back good news. He made his way to his office, and there found Gnarl. So, what are the results? We are still missing a team, but all hives have been recovered along with the artifacts. We have recovered the old smelters. Giblet can build new armors with the seals already engraved in the metal. We have also recovered many scrolls on Fuinjutsu and some on UAL positions, they have been placed in your quarters. The team sent to Kiri also confiscated some pictures of the current Mizukage, Terumi Mei. I am so selling those on the black market, they're gonna go nuts over who sold them. The Kumo team recovered several armor suits and weapons stolen during the sack. Why wasn't Kumo using them? The Tower Heart cut them off, so they stopped functioning. Oh, nice. But what about the lost team? Ah, yes, it is the team sent to the ruins of U. They have sent back everything they were supposed to recover, but failed to report in time. Must we send another team to recover them? Before Naruto could answer, however, bolts of red lightning began coursing on the portal, and the team began to zap back in, with much shiny goodies. The team leader arrived last, wearing a diamond necklace and various gold bracelets. She also had a quite large scroll slung across her back, scroll that she calmly removed and placed in front of her lord before happily making her way to the barracks. Naruto looked at the retreating female questionably for a moment, before placing the scroll down and unfurling it. Then his jaw dropped. However, before he could comment on what had been brought to him, the Tower Heart rippled to life, showing Kakashi. Naruto, we are to report to the Hokage Tower at once. A mission has come up. Naruto immediately zapped back to Konoha and followed his teacher as they raced across the rooftops, reaching the Hokage Tower in record time. As soon as they arrived, the secretary ushered them in the office, putting them face to face with the Hokage at his most serious. Kakashi, Naruto, I have received word from Team 7. Their mission went awry, and we lack the manpower to properly reinforce them at the time. I'm sending you there. You must leave as quickly as possible and make your junction with them before they embark on a boat to Wave. I cannot stress enough how celerity is of the utmost importance there. Word has been sent to Team 8 and they will join you in Wave for support. Go. Both ninja saluted and quickly stepped out of the office. Before Kakashi could shunshin back home, Naruto grasped his sleeve, bringing the attention of the veteran on him. I think now is a good time to offer you a suit of Uzumaki armor. I had one prepared for you, we just have to grab our pack, don our armors, and zap to a portal I have set up in the countryside, and we can go from there and actually be faster than just leaving through the gate. Very well, let's go. Send a clone to the Hokage to explain, I'll go grab my pack and meet you at the Konoha portal. With a nod, they parted way. Anko looked at her students calmly. Sasuke was strong, there wasn't any reason to doubt that, but his mentality was that of a potential deserter, and that pissed her off greatly. Sakura was a dominating personality trapped within the mind of a submissive fangirl. She was fighting herself, and while her social conditioning had prevailed so far, it was slowly breaking. Yakumo was a piece of living fun. She was delightfully depraved, and once she had cleared with Iruka that she could still have fun with girls, and a couple of their friends, Anko had been able to properly educate the girl in the arts of the bed. But that doesn't mean that sweet little Yaku-chan was weak, far from that. In fact, she had found in the girl a wonderful partner in crime, using and abusing her capacities to visit untold horrors upon Sasuke, to their shared delight. With a sigh, Anko returned to watching over the surroundings, hoping the reinforcements she had asked for would arrive quickly. Suddenly, she heard movement behind her. Turning to face the potential threat, she signaled for her team to form a defensive perimeter around the client while keeping her senses open to detect any hidden threat. What she saw was her favorite porn reader and his student, in full battle gear. Interestingly, Kakashi wore an Ashigaru armor lacquered in gray, with traditional stylized designs of dogs painted on it. "You're our reinforcements?" she asked. "We are," answered Kakashi in a drawl. "Prove it. How is Iruka-sensei? Are his hips holding up?" asked the overlord, his distorted voice thick with amusement. Why, he's doing quite good, Blondie. Anko answered with a cheeky smile. Gotta thank ya for setting us up like that. I aim to please, answered Naruto, his smirk almost audible. Gentlemen and gentle psychos, we need to proceed, so please. Interrupted Kakashi. What is the status of the mission? Drunky over there forgot to mention his sworn enemy had the money to buy missing nins, and the big guns. According to the two Urs we met earlier, it's Momochi Zabuza that's gonna give us a welcome hug when we reach Wave. Wonderful. That man destroyed a convoy of Ika Ika earlier in his carrier, he must die. Calmly explained Kakashi while sharpening a tanto he had pulled out of nowhere. He did what? Roared an enraged Yakumo. How dare he? How dare he harm the sanctity of Ika Ika? I will submit him to the worst genjutsu I can pull off, roast his balls, shove them down his throat before pulling out each of his teeth with a sewing needle and stabbing them all in his. Everyone looked at Yakumo for a moment, Sakura looking surprisingly less disturbed than what was expected, before Kakashi pointed the young girl. I like that girl. She knows what is good and holy in this world. Naruto stepped up to her and extended a hand of friendship. My fellow Ika Ika worshipper, please allow me to assist you in your quest to vanquish the miscreant that defiled the sacred wagon of the holy book. With pleasure, friend, we shall shower our wrath upon the heretic and purge his soul by the holy fire of revenge. And hopefully, consecrate Wave Country with a few dozen reenactment of Ika Ika scenes. She said passionately, her voice turning into a seductive purr at the end. It would be with pleasure, but I cannot take you up on your offer yet. My fiancée would take it badly if I kept her out of such an occasion. She would be most honored and enthused at the idea of participating in the consecration of this profane land. Anko and Kakashi looked on, a tear of pride flowing down their cheeks. Tazuna looked completely shocked, and was looking at his empty bottle of sake accusingly, his eyes spelling clearly his thoughts. Why did you betray me so, in my hour of greatest need? Team 7 and Kakashi were walking down the dirt path leading to Tazuna's house. They had disembarked from the fisherman's boat a short while ago and were now walking a sparsely used path to reach his home safely. However, with the knowledge of exactly who they were fighting, the mist rolling about the area gave away the fact it was about as safe as the Yondaime Day in Iowa. Not exactly a good place to be if you were from Konoha. Thankfully, they had a plan. Oi, Zabi-chan, come out and play, yelled Anko loudly, her voice echoing throughout the forest. I have a few spankings for ya. Anko proceeded to pull out a wooden paddle. And I got your favorite toy too. Come on, Cupcake, come out and call me mommy. The massive sword that came flying at her was her answer. Sadly for Zabuza, he had leapt to land on the handle of his sword without checking if it was there, simply because he was too incensed. That is why he hadn't noticed Kakashi uppercutting the sword away while keeping his nose in his book. And that is why he found himself bouncing off a tree, looking utterly ridiculous. What the? That was about as far as he got before Anko demonstrated her talent in paddle wielding by sending him flying via a powerful falcon paddle to the rear. While he regained his bearings and found his sword, the Konoha group calmly organized themselves, taking their sweet time to pick the exact best position at the millimeter. By the time Zabuza had gathered his wits and weaponry and landed in front of the teams again, Sasuke and Sakura were guarding the client and looking at their comrades like they were crazy. Naruto had stricken a pose with his tachi drawn and pointed at Zabuza. Yakumo was levitating in the air with an air of evilness floating about her. Anko was smiling cheekily while juggling her paddle, and Kakashi had turned a page. And that's when things took a turn for the worse, again. Straight from the sky, falling from who knows what, came Team 8. Kurenai looked normal enough, and Hinata was wearing her armor. It was just that both Kiba and Shino were wearing large, brown robes and wielding buzzing swords made of light, purple for Shino, red for Kiba. Zabuza had a blank look in his eyes as he looked at the newly arrived team. Where the did you come from? Tumbled out of his lips. Shino merely pointed upward, where there was only a clear blue sky. Sasuke looked at the sky, then at Team 8, then back at the sky, before uttering a surprised, "What the swag?" was Shino's only answer. That's when Zabuza decided he had enough of this nonsense and charged. Immediately, he was intercepted by the two Jonin, with Anko blocking his mighty sword with her paddle and Kakashi jump kicking at his head. Zabuza looked at the paddle with wide eyes before dodging the kick, resulting in yet another falcon paddle to the rear. Flipping in mid-air, he landed on his feet and looked at the two Jonin in disbelief. A wooden paddle was not supposed to be able to hold off the Kubikiribocho. People were not supposed to appear out of nowhere. And most importantly, a young teen was not, under any circumstances, supposed to be floating a few centimeters above ground with her hair dancing in a non-existent wind, ethereal flames spinning around her and generating killing intent absolutely off the charts. He knew that Konoha had a reputation for producing insane and powerful ninja, but that was seriously pushing it. At least they respected the laws of physics before. Anko smirked idly, twirling her wooden paddle in her hand and pointing it at Zabuza menacingly. "Show me your moves, Cupcake," she yelled with a taunting smile. Meanwhile Kakashi has somehow summoned a tribunal, and was sitting as the judge, in ceremonial robes. Case 22-369, Momochi Zabuza. The charges are as follow. Attack on Ika transporting device, destruction of said device, destruction of the holy Ika it contained, slaughter of Ika spreading personnel, blasphemy, and blatant lack of eyebrows. What do you plead, Zabuza-san? Wh. Are you talking about that book wagon I destroyed a few years back? He asked in astonishment. Could the day really get weirder? Guilty it is. Very well, the court condemn you too. Wait a moment please. Let it be known that Karma wasn't the only immaterial entity prancing around the elemental nations, there was also its cousin, Murphy. Murphy was one mischievous fellow, always answering when called. Sadly, he considered he was called when someone said that a situation couldn't get worse or something like that, and Zabuza's question was an invitation in its incorporeal eyes, so. Kakashi blinked while looking at the ghostly entity standing before him. The only ones that didn't seem troubled were Team 8. The man-ghost was tall, had a small brown beard, large brown robes incredibly similar to those worn by Shino and Kiba, and was blue-tinted and somewhat transparent. Yes sir, I am Obaswag Kenobi, and I demand that the charges of unswaginess and lack of drive be added. And I also demand to be told what Ika is because it sounds like fun. Very well, the charges of unswaginess and lack of drive are added to the case. In light of it all, the court condemns Momochi Zabuza to death with ridiculously high prejudice. The tribunal disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi made a clone that began to explain to Obaswag the glory of Ika, and Zabuza was once again attacked. With a very unmanly yelp, the swordsman dived to the side as the paddle flew through the place he had been in, before ducking again as the wooden tool came back, once again giving a large finger to the laws of physics. Kakashi used this distraction to close in and engage Zabuza in close combat with his abnormally sharp tanto, while Yakumo summoned an army of sentient and carnivorous Ika to bestow holy retribution upon the unbeliever. Hinata, who had gathered that Zabuza had destroyed a cart of Ika, decided that now was a good time to let her bow sing a song of fury and blood, and thus let loose a flurry of arrows that all came dangerously close to piercing one of Zabuza's tenketsu while presenting absolutely no danger to Kakashi. Hard-pressed as he was, Zabuza was forced to scramble away and summon a bunch of water clones to fend off Yakumo's ferocious books. That's when he heard the horn. A piece of the ground suddenly upturned, revealing a brownish light coming from it, and from the inside of this unexpected pit, a horde of small, brown creatures crawled, babbling and giggling, laughing and screaming, dressed in rabbit pelts and wolf fur, white hair and kitchen pots. They hardly looked fearsome, but they were many. Easily above 200, most of them only equipped with clubs. Naruto lowered his fist, and with a cry, charged along with his minions. Zabuza, trapped in all this chaos, felt true fear for the first time in years. He had only faced a few Konoha ninja, and most of them were the rank and file, sane type. These guys were obviously insane, and at a whole different level. For Kami's sake, the laws of physics were a joke to them. Since when could wooden paddles catch fire only when delivering a hit? Wait, what? Gah! Thunk! Once again, Anko's ferocious falcon paddle sent Zabuza flying away and into a tree. As he climbed back to his feet, he was horrified to see that he was surrounded. Kakashi was in front of him, the paddle user just behind him, apparently charging an attack. The horde of brown imps were on his right with the armored kid at their head, the carnivorous porn books were on his left with the creepy girl leading them, the third Jonin was behind him with her two sword-wielding students, and the archer was aiming at his privates from a tree behind the imps. He was so screwed. I guess we can't talk about it. His answer came in the form of a viciously smirking Anko. Falcon style. Paddle fury. A combo counter appeared in the right corner of the screen and the background turned dark as Anko flashed behind Zabuza, leaving a trail of fire in her wake, and slamming her paddle with devastating force on Zabuza's butt cheeks once for each, before spinning on her heels, and dealing 4 more hits with her paddle, bringing the counter at 6. Spreading slightly her feet for a better balance, Anko spanned the paddle around her fingers using her chakra, hitting Zabuza's rear at high speed and bringing the combo at no less than 58. Under the strain of the assault, Zabuza flew into the air, his face an expression of unfathomable pain, but Anko wasn't finished. Jumping after her victim, Anko gathered energy in her paddle, leaving a trail of fire in its wake, and creating a small star on it. Just as she was beneath Zabuza, she lunged. As the paddle was about to make contact with Zabuza's abused behind, time slowed to a crawl as the star compressed slowly, before exploding violently. Falcon style. Nova paddle. With much smoke and over-the-top pyrotechnics, Zabuza disappeared into the sky, leaving only a pinging star in the blue sky and a cry of, Zabuza's blasting off again. Anko fell down to her feet, juggling her paddle tauntingly while the victory music played. Sasuke, Sakura and Tazuna could only look in bewilderment, their jaws getting to know the ground. Well, that went well, said Kakashi lightly with an eye smile, Anko nodding in agreement. Shino, with an artistic twirl of his sword, retracted the blade and put the handle to his waist, calmly making his way to his ghostly sensei, who was currently eating ghostly popcorn. Was my performance to your satisfaction, sensei? Well, you didn't do much, but you did it with style, so yeah. But I think you'll have to work a bit more with your Padawan, he still has a shaky grip on the swag. And indeed, Kiba's twirl was far less gracious and beautiful than Shino's. The young Aburame nodded, there would be much work. However, Hinata noticed a little something. Wait, I thought the junk food summoning contract was a Hyuga property. Oh, that, yeah, I gave the contract to the Hyuga, no reason to let it spoil away while I was dead. Oh, that explains a lot, said Hinata in understanding, just before Yakumo appeared in front of her with a big, eager smile. It's you, isn't it? You're the one that brought the book to me, she said with a very happy smile. Hinata blinked before an expression of realization appeared on her face. You're the girl the Kurama trapped in that room. Yes, it was me. I can't imagine a fate worse than being trapped in a room with nothing good to re-HMMPH. Hinata's compassionate speech was interrupted by Yakumo kissing her senseless, causing Naruto a nosebleed, especially since Hinata began kissing back after sending a glance his way. Oh, he loved his life. When the two girls finally separated for air, Yakumo had a shit-eating grin. Oh, the Aika Aika reenactment will be so fun. Aika Aika reenactment, said Hinata, perking up. She turned to Naruto. Were you aware of that Naru-kun? Wait, you're Naruto's fiancé? Asked Yakumo as her grin threatened to split her face. Even better. We can start soon. He said we could once you arrived. Hinata sent an appreciative smile to her fiancé as he removed his mempo. Said blonde had the smile of the century on his face. I'm a lucky bastard, he said happily. Then, both he and Hinata used the outfit switching scroll and changed into their kimono. As soon as the smoke had dispersed, Yakumo began to shamelessly ogle the couple. Alright, keep your pants on, lover girl, we need to get the client home. Said Anko. However, you're free to jump them once we're on safe grounds. Yakumo grinned lecherously. Her program once they were safe was pretty obvious to everyone. Zabuza was, to put it shortly, in pain. The fact that his defeat had been administered in such an embarrassing way did not help. I mean, he had been spanked into submission. And thrown through the airs. And finally, he had crashed face first in the forest, making a crater and placing him in a quite undignified position with his flaming behind up in the air. Thankfully, his tool, slave, and officially adopted daughter found that now was a good moment to deliver a cool wind to his abused buttocks, numbing the pain. Kami be thanked for Hyoten. As she helped him stand and tied something around his waist to avoid further humiliation through exposure of his cherry-red rear end, Haku tried to rein in her shock. Zabuza-sama, how could they have beaten you so easily? She asked in fear. Simple Haku, they are how the elite kind of ninja Konoha can produce. The elite kind. Yeah, the ones so insane that even nature gives up on containing. He looked at his daughter and saw her blinking owlishly at him, quite visibly not understanding what he meant while she helped him to limp to their hideout. Remember that saying, there are things that everyone knows are impossible to do, then someone comes that doesn't know and do the thing. Well, these guys know it's impossible and do it anyway. The reason why Konoha is so strong and has won every single war it has been in is because reality has a very loose grip on their top shinobi. Don't you mean their top shinobi have? No, and that's the problem. And it was like that since the start. The Shidaime Hokage was a complete hyperactive goofball that married a trigger-happy seal master specialized in wide-area explosions and containment, generally of said explosions. The Nadaime was an of legendary proportion that managed to look innocent while humiliating every last one of his enemies. The Sandaime, a benevolent grandfather. The old monkey is a master seducer that worked in tandem with his wife. The both of them convinced more kunoichi to join Konoha than anyone else before, and those that resisted were literally, into joining them. I heard the old bastard had a freaking harem at his peak. And no one else could equal them? Asked a positively aghast Haku. There was one village, Uzushiogakure, home of the Uzumaki clan, that was at least as demented as Konoha. It took over 45,000 shinobi, trained specifically for the occasion, to take down 5,000 nut jobs. And the number of survivors was so small that they all fit in one boat. On that day, no less than 12 hidden villages died, and only one of them was the target. But the worst was to come. You see, before dying, the Uzumaki managed to ferry one of their own to Konoha. Just thinking about her gives me the creeps. Whimpered Zabuza in anguish. Haku looked at her master in abject shock and horror. How could it be? How could the fearless demon of the bloody mist be so afraid? Uzumaki Kushina, the burning demon, the grinning reaper, the crimson death, the fury of whirlpool, the burning legion. So many nicknames, for one entity of evil and madness. She stopped a fireball the size of a house simply by refusing to be burned once. I heard she once glared a Raiden jutsu into fizzling out. The only one worse than her was the Yondaime Hokage. That blonde bastard had bet he could go faster than light and strived to do just that, and what's worse is that the little bastard actually did it. Oh, by the gods, I shudder to think what could have happened if those two had a kid. It would be hell on earth. But what of the clans there? Are you kidding me? The clans produce the vast majority of their insane ninja. The Hyuga are a bunch of perverts with the biggest collection of fetishes ever. The Inuzuka are basically dogs in human skin that live for the thrill of life or death situations, and the Aburame are a walking nightmare with sadistic tendencies that they satisfy by sicking their hives upon their enemies, preferably when they don't see it coming. The Nara may seem lazy, but they are evil masterminds and no one really knows what they are planning. Their Yamanaka allies are mind controllers and that's evil enough, and the Akamichi are sadists that enjoy destroying other people's homes and hide it behind false jolliness. The Uchiha were among the biggest pyromaniacs ever. The Senju are completely over the top in nearly everything they do, and the Kurama enjoy nothing more than mind-raping unsuspecting victims. And then there's the Sarutobi. Oh dear God, the Sarutobi. They are downright evil. If you knew all they have their monkey summons do. And then there's also the Yuhi in there. And so, Zabuza listed the various clans of Konoha, big and small, to Haku and their mental disorders, leaving the young girl suitably impressed and terrified once they reached their hideout. Just when she was about to leave Zabuza's room to let him rest, however, she couldn't help but ask a question. Zabuza-sama, what was the particularity of the Uzumaki clan? Beyond freakishly red hair, they had ungodly stamina, fought in old samurai armor, and had little like slaves. Oh gods no. She had a kid. Mother Amaterasu save us. We're all gonna die. AAAAACHOW. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Asked Hinata worriedly. Yeah, no worry, someone must be talking about how awesome I am. He dismissed. Now, what scenes exactly are we going to reenact? Why not the part of Ika Ika recovery where Misao and Suki come to comfort Tenzo after that fight with Roku? Offered Yakumo. Oh, good one, exclaimed Hinata. I'll be Suki. Then we could act that moment of Ika Ika soft hands where Goku makes love to Yukiya and Asuka. I'd love to be Asuka. Sounds good to me. Smile Yakumo. Your thoughts Naru-kun? I like both of those scenes, so sure. But why not add the part of Ika Ika Thunderstorm where Tasuki and Miko give a show to Muta? Oh yeah, that's good. Happily gushed Yakumo. Kakashi and Anko looked at their charges, a single tear of pride flowing down each of their cheeks. Once they were situated at Tazuna's house, Naruto was dragged by Hinata and Yakumo upstairs for some important religious ritual.